and welcome to Pamnet TV Africa. My name is Pamela Muthui. Today we're going to bring you yet another episode on Beyond Your Story. And we're going to hear a very interesting yet very inspirational story from one and only Professor Sarone Ole Sena. It is such an honor for us to get to interview this man full of great wisdom and experience. Karibuni sana, may you enjoy. But before we do that, please remember to subscribe on our YouTube channel, follow, like, share. Asanteni sana and karibu. How are you, Professor?
Very well.
Kindly introduce yourself to our viewers.
Yes, I'm Professor Sarone Ole Sena, and I'm from Narok County. And I have a wife and 3 kids. And I've gone to school like Pam and you guys. Started many years ago in Narok, nursery for 2 years, or primary for 4 years, upper primary for 4 years, high school for 6 years, but the 5th and 6th year were cut short because I didn't have school fees, so I had to go to junior college in Eldoret. Then a little after that, after working for a little bit as a teacher, as an officer in the education, I went to University of Nairobi. In those days, we only had the University of Nairobi. Yeah? Actually, the university at that time was Makerere even for East Africa. So my father-in-law asked me one day whether I was in Makerere, because for them, the university was Makerere. So I said, no, now we have a university in Kenya, and we have one in Tanzania, University of Dar es Salaam, even as Makerere continues to educate East Africans and beyond. And after University of Nairobi, where I did my first degree in education, I worked with the Kenya National Archives. We are the guys who brought that building right in the middle of Nairobi to be, because the Kenya National Archives was a small department. But we had bought Vice President Jose Morombi's collections, and we needed a bigger place to store the archival materials. So I was sent to the Vice President's house for a month to list all of the things that the government of Kenya was buying from him or from the wife, because Joseph Morombi was late at that particular time. We are talking about 1977, 1978. And a little after working with the Kenya National Archives for 9 months, I went to University of Cambridge, where I did a master's, and then later I went to McGill in Canada, where I did a PhD, and then came back to East Africa. My first landing was in Tanzania, where I worked with World Vision for 10 years. And then I left and worked with Compassion for 8 years. And then I went back to World Vision for another 4 years in Uganda. So I worked all over East Africa, basically. That is when I visited a lot of African countries, but also went out of Africa and covered a lot of ground, from New Zealand, Australia, to all of Europe, all of Asia, to North America, to South America, to Central America. During those days when I was working between 1993 and now 2023. And so in the process, then I was teaching all along, even in those NGOs, teaching all along because of my interest in education and empowerment and capacity building of people. I founded an organization called University Goes to the Village. Millions of people don't have access to university, and so we needed to reach out to them. And so University Goes to the Village program.
Professor, before we talk about University Goes to the Village program, which is what we are really interested in hearing about today, please tell us, while growing up, as in the early days, as a Maasai child, and embracing education and the changes that we've just talked about, being able to come up as a regional leader within East Africa with all the travels. How was that for you? Because, I mean, can we hear a little bit about your back? How was your childhood, basically?
Very difficult, very difficult. My childhood was very difficult. My mother left me when I was 2 years, and she went to be married to another man and another family. And so I was fostered by the paramount chief, Sarone Ole Sena, whose kids, one has become a senator, another one has become a governor now in Narok, and another one is a member of parliament, and others are also doing okay because they went to school. But during my fostering, when paramount chief fostered me, it was very difficult because in those days we didn't have shoes, we didn't have even shorts. We only wore a Maasai piece of cloth, Maasai shuka in other words, not the ones that we have now which are bigger. Those days we had very, very tiny cloth. And we walked to school. I remember walking to school 4 kilometers to and from, 8 kilometers in general. And yet we didn't have lunch. And we had only drunk a little bit of porridge in the morning. And we were going to be drinking the same porridge in the evening because there was very little food at the time. And material things were not very many even in the shops. So no shoes, no proper clothing, no food. Life generally was very, very hard. The first 6 years 2 years of nursery, 4 years of lower primary. But when we went to boarding in Narok town, because those things took place in my village town, Ololunga, when we went to boarding school, class 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, things, at least there was food, and there were shoes, and we had uniform. So for us, boarding was a savior. We actually enjoyed it thoroughly because at least we could eat something in the morning, the afternoon, and in the evening. And we also had company because majority, 99.9% of the kids who went to those schools were Maasai from our different villages in Narok. And when I finished Form 4, then I went to Eldoret for 2 years. And that is when I began now to meet other Kenyans who treated me very well indeed. My junior teachers college was very good and actually became the best teacher of the year in that college. That is when I began now to get a lot of hope in life. I knew now, me becoming a little bit more independent, I could conquer the rest of the world. And indeed, with the help of God and community, whichever community I was in, whether it was Eldoret or back in Narok, I became more and more successful, but not without a lot of difficulties on the way, which I'll explain later if we have a bit of time.
Oh, thank you for that, Professor. Now we can talk about university goes to the village.
So when I finished my PhD at McGill University in Montreal, Canada, I came back to East Africa. I went to Tanzania in '93, and I was working with World Vision and especially doing capacity building, which is really education because that was my degree, first and second and third. And so I started, in those days, '93, I started University Goes to the Village program. Why University Goes to the Village? Because most people would come from the villages to go to university in towns.
Yes.
So I wanted to make it easier for them. And indeed, I took it to Narok. I started with my village, and we trained over the years. Till now, we're still training over 2,000 young men and women to get a certificate even those who never went to school will receive a certificate at their level. Those who went to school up to class 4, up to class 7, up to Form 2, up to Form 4, we gave them a certificate, but at their level. We indicated in the certificate that they have reached this level. Those obviously who had a diploma already, we gave them something slightly better than that, a degree. Those who had a first degree, we gave them a master's. Those who had already had a master's, we gave them PhD. And we, through University Goes to the Village, they got formal education, which they have now used, thanks to devolution, to be employed in the counties, Kajiado, Narok, Samburu, Baringo, Laikipia, and even across the border in Tanzania, because Maasais are everywhere. In addition to that, that is one thing University Goes to the Village does. The other thing that it does is it mentors people. We have mentored over 200 people. One couple that we mentored, for example, is in Tanzania. This lady was a 5th wife to this man who had 6 wives. And so the lady had dropped out of school in Form 1 because she had a baby. And so the parents were so upset with her that they sold her. They basically sent her away. And so this guy negotiated with the parents to allow them to marry her. So she became a 5th wife. And I found her in 1991 and started mentoring her and telling her that there was hope. And we started a journey, but we had to go to the husband who allowed her to come to Nairobi for English. I was in Arusha at the time. And then after her 6 months of English, we took her back to Arusha. And when we did, we then put her on Form 1, 2, 3, 4 school system in Tanzania, where we basically put her in an adult education class, and she made it and did the Form 4 exam and passed it with a Division 3. Because of that, she became a counselor, or today in Kenya we will call it MCA, and became a counselor for 25 years. And because of that hope, she gave her co-wife and her husband and her community more and more hope to send kids to school. So they started sending kids to school. She herself had 4 kids. I found her sending the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th to school. So I helped the 2nd born to go to Kemu in Meru, and I helped the 3rd born to go to Ugandan schools, and helped the last born, the 4th born, to go to Canada, and she's still there now. This lady also, because of that huge hope we gave her during mentoring, has a modern house, which the husband is extremely proud of.
Yeah.
And has a car. And occasionally the husband sits in front as if he's king of the whole area, which is very good. Yeah. But we have mentored 199 others whose stories we have, if you are interested.
Absolutely, and viewers, we shall be sharing more on that. You must have seen on our pages that we are sharing Professor Sena Unplugged session, where we'll be having all these stories of mentorship. So keep following our social media pages for more stories. But now, Professor, talking about education, which is a very key pillar in a person's, in a human's life, and the way we have young people out here who've gone through the education system, passed their exams, they're out here with the papers that are required, the degrees, the diplomas, and there's no job. That is coming out as one of the challenges that we are having, and especially now in Kenya with our young people. What would you say about that?
University Goes to the Village program helps young people address that issue. What we tell young people is that you don't enter nursery school, primary, lower primary, upper primary, secondary, college, university in order to get a job. guaranteed by the government. There is nothing guaranteed in life. What we help them do is, as soon as you get into that nursery and begin to acquire information, which is translated into knowledge, which is translated into sellable skills, usable skills. That's why we go to TVETs, that's why we go to university. Those skills, that knowledge is translated into wisdom. Use it to do a number of things. Number one, to increase that knowledge and especially acquire knowledge that will be extremely helpful for you in life. Second one, to begin to create wealth. You create wealth by self-employment, you create wealth by getting a salary job, plus you have a cow, you have a sheep, you have a goat, you have vegetables, you have land, you have a shop on the side. Right now, Pam, I'm helping my own niece. She's in the university second year to run a business. And as we talk, she is already making 50,000 a month.
Oh, wow.
As she goes to second year, third year, fourth year. So imagine that young lady, although she's doing journalism, might not even look for a job in journalism or in communication at the end of the 4 years or 5 years or 6 years if she decides to do a master's. She might just go into business or might just go into using her communication, her PR, the skills she will have acquired from nursery all the way to University of Nairobi to do something for herself. A lot of kids, boys and girls, are told by their parents, their neighbors, their peers that, oh, you are going to school, work hard so that you get a good job.
Yeah.
At some point. Oh, unfortunately, they work hard and then they get B pluses, A minuses, A even straight A's, and then there is no job. The reason why is because somebody believed that education is tied to a salaried job. I want you to read Poor Dad and Rich Dad. It says, even if you got that salary job, you'll not become rich. The salary will only put a bit of food on the table, will probably help you buy clothes. You will struggle with school fees with your salary. And so you've got to go to school from nursery all the way to college and university in order to get skills that you can sell to anybody to do anything in life. Don't depend on government jobs. Don't depend on NGO jobs. Don't depend on private sector jobs. Don't depend on anybody. Become your own employer. Become an employer. Don't become an employee. And throughout my own life, when I was 19, Pam, can you believe this? I was employed as a teacher making 225 shillings a month.
Wow.
But I had side projects for myself because I knew 225 a month salary will never get me anywhere. And within 2 years, I bought 50 acres of land.
Wow.
And throughout my career of 54 years now, since 1969, I have never depended on a salary with either government or NGO or university or anybody, because I knew to not go very far. I use my many skills to create wealth, to create my own employment, to do 5 jobs simultaneously. I had my teaching to do, but I had 4 other things going for me. And so I have accumulated like 1,400 acres of land. Salary will never have given me that. And so my friend, if you're listening or reading this, use the salary to be only the starting point for you, and get involved in business, get involved in other activities, get involved, use your skills, use your knowledge use whatever God has given you to do other things to bring yourself more and more and more income. Don't go to the streets and protest against government, which somebody told you will give you a job at the end of your schooling, because those jobs are drying up, and even if they are not drying up, education was never meant to lead to a salary job given on a silver plate. No, education was meant for you to get skills, to get knowledge, to get wisdom that you can use to run your life and become and move from being dependent, poor dependent, to independence, and then become interdependent with society, with community, with your siblings, with your mom and dad, with others that are around you. That is what education is meant to do, to move you from dependency to independence to interdependence, with or without a salaried job, because you now have skills and knowledge that you can use to create wealth yourself.
Professor, as an academia and a professor, do you feel that our curriculums or the programs that we have within the systems of how we run our education have addressed this particular issue properly? Or do we even have enough programs to educate the youth on this?
Now, you see, the challenge we have had over the years with the Kenyan education is that it has been very academic. So when I went to school in 1955, kindergarten, lower primary, upper primary, it was to teach me the ABCDs, the 1, 2, 3, academic. My first exam, would you believe this, was done in class 4. And so the government assumed that after this test, I am now prepared to face the world. Academically, no, they are wrong there. And then I went to class 5, fortunately, to class 8. There was another exam, KCPE. The government assumed that if you are stopping here, you now have the skills to function in life. Wrong again. And then after that, fortunately, I went to Form 1 to 4. After Form 4, I did KCSE. The government assumed that after O level, and especially if I get a C plus, B minus, B plus, A minus, A, I am completely okay in life. That is not true at all. That is not true at all. The government right now is trying to get it right through CBC. It is competency-based curriculum. What they should be focusing on is the competencies, because at the end of the day, how competent are you to function in life? Economically, sociopolitically, spiritually, physically, and in all areas of life. This is the first time that the government is trying to get it. But you see, they introduced CBC awkwardly in the sense that they did not prepare teachers for CBC, they did not prepare pupils for CBC, they did not prepare parents for CBC. So there is a lot of noise against CBC, which is competence-based. In my view, when you focus on the skills themselves, the practical skills, when you tap on what potential does this child have, you are getting it right, because we are all made differently. Some are musicians, some are sportsmen and women, some are dancers, some are academic like myself. We cannot, unlike before CBC, assume that everybody is going to be academic, because actually we have more dropouts and more failures in our academic system in the last 60 years than we have those that have passed. There is a very tiny percentage of graduates in the country. because we have tended to take a more academic approach to education. Education is not 1 + 2 and you got it, so you are good in life. No, it is more than that. It is preparing you for life, educationally, economically, socio-politically, spiritually, and physically.
Professor, if you were to write a biography of yourself, what will you call it and why?
If I was to write an autobiography of myself,
yes.
I would title it Mentored to Mentor Others. You see, I've spent almost my entire life since I became independent farm mentoring others and helping others realize that education is not meant to lead to salary. Helping others realize that parents who bring us up do not expect your children to carry you on your backs. It is moving them from dependency to independence to interdependence. The best you can expect from your kids, parents, I hope you are reading and listening to this, is for you and them to work together so that the children of your children can now begin to move out of dependency into independence, into interdependence, in a way that you and their parents are helping them. But don't use this philosophy of Africa that says that if you don't look after me, you will receive a curse, because it doesn't work anyway. What works is that the parents need to bring up their children properly so that those kids can bring up their own children properly, so that those children, those grandkids, can bring up their own children properly, and no one should be demanding that you look after me. Every person needs, including our parents, including our grandparents, need to move from dependency, climbing on somebody's back, to independence, to interdependence. And when I say to independence, I mean educationally, economically, sociopolitically, spiritually, and physically. You should be able to get out of poverty yourself and begin to own wealth and properties so that you can share that with your immediate family plus your neighbors.
What is the one thing that you would tell your younger self? If you went back to your early days, what would you do differently?
What will I do differently? What I would do differently is that I will invest in education, but invest in that kind of education that begins to employ me even when I'm in lower primary, in upper primary,
Yeah.
in secondary school.
Yeah.
Because I realized that when I was going to university. So when we had strikes in the 70s, when I was going to university, I went back to employ myself. But I should have realized that when I was in secondary and in primary upper and in primary lower, in order for me then to become more independent quickly, and in order for me then to join my siblings and to join my parents to become interdependent with them. And in that way, our African society will prosper. Unlike now, when there is so much dependency on each other. And that is one reason why we have so many kids per mother. That is why we have so many of this or that, because we need that safety social net. We would not need that if all of us started early to use whatever skills we have to become more and more independent by actually creating wealth and beginning to move in the direction of becoming independent.
Well, thank you very much, Professor, for your time. I know we have so much that we need to hear from you. We will be coming back to you for another interview. So viewers, thank you very much for staying tuned to our YouTube channel and for following Beyond Your Story with Professor Sarone Ole Sena. We will definitely come back for more. Stay tuned and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I hope you got to enjoy this interview and you picked your lessons. Asanteni sana and God bless you.